I had is the video rolling? Okay. While you guys are getting your seats, I had a couple of really good questions through the break. One of them was about my soil fertility formula that had the azomite rock dust and the worm castings and the biochar. You know, a lot of times as a gardener, some things aren't always as clear or scientific when you're trying to portray it to someone else. And a lady asked me, well, how exactly do you implement that? So what I'll do, I'll have a ditch, and my mounds of soil are on either side. I put my compost down the center, and then I'll sprinkle the other elements. I'll take a cup, I love a Taco Bell cup, because they're nice and large. And I can take and fill that cup full of my material, let's say it's biochar. And I'll just go sprinkle down my row, dip it and sprinkle, dip it and sprinkle. And I'll do that with all those materials. I don't have a scientific, I got to measure this amount looking on a paper. I don't have that kind of time. I've got a get her done attitude with my garden because I have a huge garden. But you'll find that the plants aren't picky. They're fine. Just give them enough. Those are trace elements. Everything below compost is a trace element. So you don't need a huge amount. Just sprinkle out of a cup on there and just get what you think is a liberal amount, but don't overdo it. You'll be fine. So, what?
What's the name of what you're sprinkling?
That was on in the beginning. Were you here? Well, this slideshow will be available later. You could look it over. I'll let you look it over later. I'll tell you after the class. I had a really good piece of advice that I wanted to share with you guys. Corn can be a real problem because you have, not only do the worms love to attack your corn, but I don't know what it is about a raccoon. But those guys they're scientists in disguise of a pest because they know exactly the day that you are going to go harvest your corn and they'll come the day before. I mean, they're uncanny. So what I do is on raccoons, there's only one way to handle them. I got with Premier One and I got a little device. It's a charger that it attacks to a boat battery, and I set up an electric fence. The first wire is about 6 inches off the ground, the next wire is about 8 inches above that, and that gives them about 8,000 volts. And when they hit that, there's actually a green flame that comes off of it. When they hit that, they go, "What was that?" And they are out of there, they never come back. Now, another thing about corn you can do is when the corn is starting to tassel. Now I haven't tried this myself. This is some advice by a gardener here. So I'm taking it on good faith. Don't hate on me if it doesn't work. Because I haven't tried it myself. Generally I like to only teach about stuff that I know. But I thought it might be worth investigating. When the corn starts to tassel, a couple of drops of olive oil on each ear will actually kill any kind of worm problem. So go try that in your own garden and let's hope that gives us some good success. Continuing on the what to grow. Have you ever seen those lettuce mixes in the supermarket? These are from Johnny's, and these are a couple of varieties of lettuce mixes. We've got All-Star and Premium Greens. I like to have a good mix of lettuce. Now one thing you'll need to do, you'll find that lettuce does not like heat. So through the summer, you have to find varieties out of these seed catalogs that are appropriate for that particular time of year. You know, a lot of lettuces, like for example, the ones I showed you before, the Red Cross and Adriana Butterhead lettuces, those are really good, but they don't like winter. They don't like extreme cold. So they like some cold, but they don't like the extreme cold winter we just got out of. But these, I've got these coming up in my garden now. You can plant these now and put them in your garden and they'll do just fine. Even if it does freeze a little bit, don't touch the plants, they'll be frozen. Just leave them alone. When the sun comes back out, they'll continue growing. This is one of the most wonderful finds that I've found. It's called a piccolino cucumber. And it's self-pollinating. Oops, I forgot to change that slide. That's a diamant cucumber. I'm sorry, I forgot to. I worked about 50 hours on this presentation, and I made a mistake here. Last night I was scrambling and worked till about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I apologize. This is a diamant cucumber. You can get that from Johnny Seeds.
Spell it.
It's on the chart. Thank you. Thank you for saving me, because I don't know the spelling of that anyway. But let me tell you something about this piccolino cucumber. This thing is prolific. You'll get so many cucumbers off of this thing. It's uncanny how much this produces. Now, I grow this in my greenhouse. You can grow it in the ground. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to have a greenhouse. But it doesn't need any bugs to pollinate it. It pollinates itself. And this thing, once my wife and I start growing this in the greenhouse, I firmly expect that we'll be getting through its peak. Now, this is a 50-day. It'll go for 50 days. It's the end of its life cycle. So you can get in several of these through the summer, early summer, fall. You can get in several of these. And this thing will probably produce about 10, through the height of its production, about 10 cucumbers a day.
A day.
It's very prolific.
10 a day.
I mean, that thing has cucumbers all over it, and it's dying now. They're small, they probably won't grow up because it's the end of its life cycle. But with nasturtiums, buds are often pickled and used like capers. And it tastes like sweet, mildly pungent, and peppery flavor. And I thought that was a nice picture. I put that in there. Some edible flowers, like pansies, the trick is to pull the petals off the flower and just eat the heads and the petals, not the rest of the plant itself. And this says, when pansies are candied for cakes, that's when the whole pansy is used. What to grow? Let's refer to the vegetable listing chart. I took a class about some of the most popular vegetables in America. So a lot of this list is based on what's really popular, what a lot of folks grow for some of the characteristics that they like. For example, where is it? With beans, where's the green beans? If you look, I have snap beans. I make sure that I put stringless because I can't stand stringing beans. I just hate doing that. Another thing is that some of the popular varieties of tomatoes in America are San Marzano and Roma. Big Beef is really popular, very good grower. Kentucky Wonder and Blue Lake Pole Bean, as you see on the list. So a lot of these things that I've named on this list are taken from people just like growing these things. They're really popular. Now, in the case of Piccolino, that's not necessarily a popular brand, but I love it because that thing produces so much. You know, if I get a plant and I can make that one plant feed my whole family of 4, I love that. And you know, the way I figure, a lot of times I'll still have my garden just because I love gardening. But if I can get one tomato plant to grow up like a tree, I'm going to do it. And I'll pick that and I'll feed my family with that. And I just think that's great. You know, why work yourself to death? Some people live in an apartment or they're renting. They can't have a garden. So you can grow in a pot And I like growing hydroponically because it's easy. First of all, when you set it up, there's a small initial fee. And then what happens is that plant is not only going to grow twice as fast as any other plant, but it doesn't have to grow a huge root mass because all the food that it needs, the trace elements, the nutrients, and everything that plant needs is right there in that hydroponic solution. And that thing will grow in some cases, not all of them, but if you take care of it right, in some cases you can have a tomato plant grow up and just go like a tree. I have a greenhouse. And I've seen a guy that had a greenhouse. He had a tomato plant. It grew up, and then it grew across his ceiling, and then started producing fruit like this, and it looked just like a tree. Now, I'll tell you how to do that with peppers. Overwintering peppers. A lot of people, at the end of the year, they feel like, well, my pepper plants, that's the end of them. If you, any which way that you can overwinter that pepper, and it comes into the next year with a full root ball, that pepper is going to produce at least 5 times more and grow a lot bigger. Now you want to put it into a bigger pot. I do a lot of pot growing in my, pardon me, I grow plants in pots in my greenhouse. So, not that other thing where, that was a slip. Anyway, I'll make the pots larger of my peppers. And then because they already have a full root ball, another thing I like to do is I clip them real short, but I'll leave 2 leaf nodes because I know out of those nodes are going to come stalks. So I'll have 4 stalks coming up on my pepper plants. What you call that is a low center of gravity. I do the same thing on my tomatoes. Do you know how all the gardeners, they'll cut off all the suckers in the beginning, and then the plant, you know how tomatoes are, they're so prolific, they'll just go poof, and the whole tomato plant, it's like, oh, it's out of hand, I couldn't sucker the thing. So here's what they've done. They've cut all the suckers off the bottom, and then they have all this uncontrollable growth on the top, and what happens? The tomato goes, whoo, well, so what I figured, and I haven't gone the whole way yet on this, but I'm trying to pioneer a new way. What I do is, I'll wait till my tomato plant, I'll let that thing grow, 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 and grow. And then I'll come along, it seems bad, it's not. I'll come along and I'll cut that thing. When that stalk is about this big or as big as my thumb, I'll cut that thing way back to about this high to where I have 2 nodes like that. They'll be like this. They'll be slightly offset. One set of leaves and then the other set of leaves. So kind of like this on that tomato plant. So what happens, I wait till the stalk is really thick, I'll let that thing do a lot of growing. And then I'll come and cut it way back and cut 4 nodes. And I'm expecting I probably will need to stake a little bit, but you see now I've made my center of gravity a lot lower now. And I don't think I'm going to need to stake as much this year. Try that out. This chart is a work in progress and covers most of the popular varieties. There's a legend on the bottom. This is actually the 2nd page to specify who sells what. Reading the catalogs are important for finding out many tips and secrets about each variety. I can't say enough about that. I don't get all the way completely through cover to cover, but I do like to read my catalogs cover to cover because within those pages I learn a lot of tips and tricks about those plants and how to take care of them that you could never find out any other way. Some of the best seed catalogs, by the way, if you guys notice, I have a bunch of seed catalogs here. I want you guys to each take a couple of them and take them home. These will give you a little start. I'm just going to throw them away. So take them all. These are excellent catalogs. Now the best catalogs that I like, the ones I order the most of my seeds from, are these ones listed. But I actually will order from like 20 different catalogs because I know certain varieties that give me certain features that I want. For example, that Piccolino, I get that from High Mowing Seeds. And, that may be the only thing I buy from that company, but that's a real gold mine. When you see how many cucumbers that plant, you can have one plant feed a family of 4. Now that's what I'm talking about. So Johnny's is my favorite. Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds is one of the most popular seed companies. Fedco Seeds, Jung. I do a lot of ordering from Jung. We're going to be looking over the software today that Jung produces for laying out a garden. They invented it, Mother Earth News reported it, and now they have huge amounts of people that are jumping on the bandwagon. I'll show you about that. Jung is one of the oldest seed companies in America. And a lot of people haven't heard of them. I love shopping from them. They have a good variety like what I want. Johnny's, the thing I like about them is that they're really expert at telling you the life cycle of the plant, some of the idiosyncrasies and what to do to take care of each one of your plants. And I like the fact that I can seal back up my seed packet when I'm done. So they do that. I find that to be nice. Try not to keep a supply of seeds for longer than 3 years. You can. You're going to find that some seeds don't keep well even after a year. I mean, some seeds like onions and spinach, one year, several years ago, before I really knew this secret, I bought a big, I think it was a 2-pound bag of spinach seeds, and I couldn't get any of them to germinate. This was like 2 years ago, and I thought, boy, what is wrong here? And the thing is, with spinach, you know, they're pretty much kaput, so you want to remember that. Keep that in mind. Some varieties are like that. These are the two main culprits that are that way. An organizer makes it easy to store seeds, and so this is what I've done at home. This is from Northern Tool. Now some seeds I'll put in the freezer, like my corn. Corn you put in the freezer. It just depends on what the seed is. Corn, some tomato seeds I put in the freezer, but most of them is okay, the vegetables to put in here. And they'll keep year after year. Now when I plant a seed, a lot of gardeners, they'll take and stick 2, 3, 4, or 5 seeds in the tray, like this. It depends. Well, I don't ever do that. I'll take 1 seed. I am such a miser with seeds, because you know what I found? A lot of times, most of my vegetables, not all, but most of my vegetables will have a good 98% success, almost 100%. With lettuces, I have almost 100% success. I'll put down a seed and I'll get a plant. So I like that, because what I do is, if I get a hole where something didn't grow, I'll just stick another seed in it. And then I keep that seed pack to the next year and I'll keep using it. It is a misnomer to believe that you have to use up your seed pack for that year. Or that you have to take and plant 5 of them and pick out. I know some people like doing that. I'm not knocking them. I'm just a miser with seeds. I like to have a lot of seeds on hand because I don't know what the future is going to hold. So it's just a personal preference with me. Now some folks, they like to plant 4 or 5 seeds and pull up major amounts of plants. I don't bond with my plants, so I guess I don't have a problem with that. I have built a seedling shelf. Now these are not mine, but I like this picture. This is very closely resembles what I have at my house. They're very easy to set up. You can buy this kind of shelf from Lowe's. Have you guys seen that? This wire shelving? It's really good. So if it gets wet, it doesn't hurt anything. And the nice thing is you can hang the fluorescent lights on their chains. And I always put a fluorescent light on a chain. The reason why is so I can easily adjust it by hand, just one person. And it just makes it so much easier. And I'll adjust the lights up as the plants grow. And when you're dealing with fluorescence, you don't have to go buy special bulbs. You just use a blue and a red. So you've got cool. I believe cool is blue. And then it's warm is the red. So just go buy the stock off-the-shelf lights at Lowe's. You'll be fine. I've done that for years. Seedling heat mat. These things are great. They're a little pricey, but I love using them. I went out and bought one this year, and it really helps on peppers. Peppers are really hard to get to germinate. Peppers like it to be 80 degrees. In some cases tomatoes too, but mainly peppers. I was planting peppers and I noticed I had to wait like 3 weeks for them to sprout. And so I bought one of these and now they come up after usually about a week, 10 days, somewhere in that neighborhood. Now what I'll do is, you know what a hothouse is? I'll put one of those things over the top of my tray after I've watered it and put it on this seedling mat, and you'll see the steam. It starts to make a continuous thing of steam. And what that does, that will double my germination rate. Some things are really hard to germinate. My favorite kind of seedling planting equipment is this right here. I use it year after year. I try to be a little careful when I take the plugs out. I make sure the plugs have enough roots so I can just carefully pull the thing out and put it in the ground. This one I think is a 72. You get these from FarmTech, F-A-R-M-T-E-K. By the way, somebody asked me to restate my website. It's Auburn Sky Farm. I'll spell that A-U-B-U-R-N. Sky Farm. Just I'll run it all into one word.com. And you can get a lot of study materials. I have a lot of videos about home gardening. Here's another style. It just depends on what you're trying to grow. For example, I would probably grow eggplants in these. I'll tell you why. Because with eggplants and peppers, they don't like cold. If they get below 53 degrees, it'll stunt their growth. I don't know if you know this. Some years, and the same thing will happen with squashes. Cucumbers, same family, it probably apply to them too, is that if it gets below that temperature threshold of 53 degrees, they get their growth stunted. Last year, I couldn't figure out. The year before, I had beautiful squashes. They were huge. I mean, they had to be at least 12 square feet or 9. And then last year, because they got caught in a freeze, I put frost blanket over them, but they still got caught, and they just never did anything. They never grew very well, and then they just all died on me. And I found out through taking a class that that was the reason why. So a bigger container like this can really help because you can leave the plant in here longer until you can plant it outside. You want to do create as less amount of work for yourself in the garden as you can. Because if you're always getting into transplanting and planting and transplanting with hundreds of plants and hundreds of containers, you're going to get tired of that really quick. So there's about 3 different sizes. Some people find 128s to be real popular. I don't like them because they're just so small. So I don't really use them myself. But a lot of the farmers in this area, they'll use 128s. And they have thousands of plants to produce. I don't. I just need to produce hundreds of them. A hothouse. That can be a really good thing. Now, what my family does is, you know those lettuce containers that you buy from Sam? Those really nice lettuce containers? They're really large in plastic. I keep those, and then I put my little seedlings in there. See, those things break apart, so I'll put a set of 12 seedlings or so in there, and I'll sit it under a light, and it'll get that natural steam in there, and that'll really help those things grow. I do that with lettuces a lot. So I save my lettuce containers to make hothouses out of them. Garden layout. You've got to consider several things with garden layout. How many plants can I grow in the space that I have? What is the best layout for my plants? Make sure to consider the size of plants when they are fully grown. For example, a cucurbit, which is another name for a squash or a cucumber, that cute little plant that's, it looks like this and it's so small and you're thinking, boy, I really need to shove that in with my other plants. That thing is going to grow like this and completely crowd out your other plants. So you have to keep in mind how much space, or you want to keep in mind if something's really tall. For example, you've got to also keep in mind your southern exposure. And if I plant something that's real tall like tomatoes, then I'm not going to want to plant lettuces right behind them where they're blocked from the sun unless it's in the midst of summertime. It just depends on the time of year. But you'll want to keep that in mind. I tend to grow the taller plants toward the end of the sun, whatever in my garden space that I see, that it won't be shadowed by a larger one. Consider the specific needs of each plant variety in the layout. Place squash, pumpkins, and cucumber that like to sprawl on the outside of the garden bed so they don't choke out other plants. One good thing to do is I've heard several farmers that they'll just take a lot of cow manure and they'll put it in a hole and they'll cover it with a light, maybe an inch or two of dirt, and they'll just make a mound just like this, and they'll plant a couple of cucumber or curcur bits inside there. Leafy greens like lettuce can benefit by the shade cast by taller plants. Sweet corn should always be planted in blocks so they can wind pollinate properly. Now another thing, if you're going to grow different varieties of corn, you want to take into account the time that it tassels and creates its seed, because you don't want to have two different corn varieties. Like I love peaches and cream. I'm going to plant a lot of peaches and cream, but I also want to feed my chickens. So I'm going to plant some field corn. And I don't want them to cross-pollinate. They'll do that like crazy and then ruin my whole crop. So what I'll do is I'll wait about 4 weeks and take into consideration the tasseling time, and I'll make sure I completely am on schedule that way so that they won't cross-pollinate each other. What needs ordering? Seeds, plants, and bulbs need to be considered ahead of time to ensure that the right timing is appropriate for each variety. We're going to cover that a little more in a minute. Tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants are best started indoors under cover several weeks before the last frost, just to name a few. So you want to get to know your plants, and your seed catalogs can really help you there with information. Other plants, such as beans, peppers, and eggplant, and squash, can't be planted until the outside temperatures are reliably warm. That's why it's important to draw up a schedule of the best times of planting each crop in your local area. So one of my handouts is from a company that's local to here. I believe they're in South Carolina. They're fairly close to here. It's close enough that it still works. And these give you planting times. The thing I like is, like here on broccoli, it tells you there's 2 different planting times for that year so that you can get 2 harvests. Throughout this process, it is important to consider what might cause problems. For example, big blocks of a single crop can easily be attacked by pests such as aphids or beetles, unless you mix in companion planting flowers to attract beneficial predator insects. For example, last year my beans got attacked by bean beetles, and so this year I'm going to make sure every plant on the list that bean beetles hate are planted at the base of those plants. A sudden hot or cold spell might damage young tender plants unless you have planted out a quick irrigation, shade, or row cover. Planned out. All of this planting can be done by hand with a paper or pencil. Software is the best to use. After you finish, you get a complete listing of how many plants you need. Here's the link. Could you guys pass this around? This is my garden. Once you pass it around on one side, just the last person bring each one of these over on the other side. And this is This is what software can do for you. Can I? I have many gardens on my farm. This one is 6 planter boxes that are all together on a hill where I live that I built. And what I've done is I've mixed the beneficial kind of plants interspersed. This is a 32-foot garden bed. And I took nasturtiums and marigolds. I planted them in the middle and on the quarter end. You'll see those in a minute. And then I planted my different plants in between those. So I'd have lots of flowers around to attract the beneficials and to repel the bad bugs. And also, if you notice the color coding here, that is coded according to the crop rotation schedule. So the next year, I'll rotate my crops, and every year after that, to keep down on the pest problem. Now this is what I really like about using software. Now the first garden layout on this software, it's on the Jung website, or you can go to Mother Earth News. I have a link for it. The first garden design is free. They'll let you use it and you don't have to pay for it. But it's $25 a year. I find it to be invaluable. I didn't use it the prior years. I've been gardening for about 6 years, and now I'll only use this year after year. But what it gives you, if you'll notice, you'll see listed in blue is the times to plant some of these varieties indoors. And it gives you a space of time. And then it also tells you when to plant them outside and when the harvest season is. That's extremely valuable. And I do tend to check these listings according to what I know to be true for my local growing area. But for the most part, these are right on target. So if you could just pass these. Thank you. If we have time, I may go to that, but I don't think we're going to have time. But I did bring a picture here. Here's a picture of the garden planner with a person that laid out their garden. This is not actually my garden, but it's something that someone laid out, and I thought they did such a good job. They have all the colors. What these colors mean is that those are in the same plant families, and then they can easily rotate. And what this software does is, the next year when you get ready to plant and take some of your plant varieties and put them in these boxes, it gives you a red spot so you know that you can't put that plant there. And it tracks you for several years. So let's say 3 or 4 years down the road, when you're okay, then it will let you know that's a good spot. Or it'll be light red to show you, well, you're several years away. You really shouldn't plant here, but you can if you have to. Because this is one of the hardest parts of gardening that people find to do, is to rotate their crops. But it's also one of the best ways to get rid of the pests that are going to hurt your garden. So we have here the tomatoes and the potatoes and the carrot family there. And this is kale. And then you have your different cabbage. Here's a herb garden. I really like the way they designed that garden. And here's a copy of that list. So what you notice is, let's take something that's fairly common like broccoli. This tells you how many broccoli plants that you had on that paper, on that design. So once I lay out my garden, the fantastic thing about this software is it tells me how many plants I need. You know, I had to compute that stuff, and a lot of times in years past, I would just plant, okay, I think I need 400 tomato plants. So I'd plant all those in my garden, and then I'd have to throw away a certain amount because I had too many. And I would never want to go under, because I'd have blank spaces in my garden. So this tells you exactly how many in that previous garden, how many you need to plant for that layout. It measures for you. Like for example, this broccoli plant needs to be, this says 1 foot 5 inches. I never work on that. I only do 1 or 1.5 or 6 inches, something like that. I never do that type, but because my tape measure is so much easier to read on a half. It's either a foot or a half. I just find that easier. But we see roughly 1.5 feet. The broccoli needs to be planted on that row apart. And then it says make the rows approximately 1.5 feet apart. Now that may seem kind of close to you, but the reason they're doing that is this is an accepted practice, is because once these plants grow up, they'll completely shade out any weeds. Now what I want you guys to realize, remember I told you about my garden that I'm a get her done type of guy? I want you to think about something. If you notice, this garden is in roughly 4-foot beds. That is really smart, because the typical conventional gardener, and I've done this a lot in the past, we'll do one long row, one long row, and we'll have one long row, and we'll have many long rows. That is so labor intensive with your weeding. You'll be weeding that thing to death. It'll be running you ragged trying to weed it and do everything. Whereas these plants grow up and they completely shade out all the weeds. There's no weeding. I mean, there's always going to be some, but it's not working you to death. I spend through the summer 60 hours a week on my small farm working, just taking care of it. And there came a time last year, I didn't have too bad of a problem in the previous years because I would put wood chips down on the walkways. But I didn't do that the last year because I had some problems with that method. And I just had a tremendous problem with weeds. And luckily my friend Bev here loaned me her tiller. And I had to till down all those rows. And it would have taken me a week to do all that weeding by hand. And by the time I would have finished weeding my garden, it would have been time to start again. So this is the way I want to see you guys. You have your walkways. Right here you can put wood chips or rocks or mulch in your walkways, and then you plant your plants in such a way to where they're dense enough that they'll, as soon as they grow up after about a month, they completely shade out all the weeds. So you're not killing yourself with work. Going back to our broccoli, right here, as you can see, it tells me that I need to start, this is the blue line, sow indoors, the green line, sow outdoors, or the orange line is when to harvest. So here on the broccoli, it says that I should sow that indoors at the beginning of March, and it can go all the way till the mid-April. And then I plant that outdoors anywhere from in the April and May, in those 2 months. The harvest time on broccoli is from June to mid-October here. So there's pages and pages of wonderful listings like this that just lay it all out for you and make it so easier. I don't know how I ever did it before. And this is the first time I've used this year. And for $25 a year, I'll tell you, that is cheap. I really love this software. I'll be using it every year. Crop rotation. Crop rotation is where we grow vegetables from each major plant family in different areas each year. Several problematic pests and diseases can build up in the soil if the plants they affect are grown in the same area each year. For example, nematodes such as eelworm can devastate potato crops grown in the same place. They also affect other vegetables in the same crop family such as tomatoes. Onion rot is a serious fungal disease that can persist when crops from the allium group are continuously grown. Cabbage root maggots affect all brassica crops. That includes broccoli. Fusarium root rot can wreak pea and bean harvest. These are just a few of the many different soil-borne pests and diseases, and crop rotation is almost universally recommended to prevent them all. So we can save ourselves a lot of the problems that will come. I guarantee you all these problems will happen, but a little bit of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Different vegetables take different balances of nutrients from the soil, and their roots access different levels of the soil structure. If there is an overrun of pests, rotation will help the next year to alleviate problems. Cabbage family plants like a lot of nitrogen. Tomatoes need plenty of calcium. Beets and beans require manganese. Many salad crops are shallow rooted, but other vegetables like potatoes and sweet corn have roots that extend deep into the soil to bring up nutrients from those layers. Because of this, growing the same vegetable in the same place year after year can lead to nutrient deficiency and poor growth. Mastering crop rotation can be the best preventative medicine you can give to your garden. This can be quite complex. A lot of people really struggle with this area, but I'm going to make it really simple for you. What I'm going to do is put all the plant families that can exist together into 4 different groupings. So we see in group 1, the potato and nightshade family, which is eggplant, peppers, potato, and tomato. We see the squash or cucurbit family, and the aster and the daisy family. Those can be all grouped into group number 1. Group number 2 is the grass family. Now, some folks don't plant these. Now, I love planting grains. I feed my chickens with it, and I also can make my own homemade bread with it, and it's wonderful. If you've ever had your own homemade bread that you've grown yourself, that's fantastic. Grass family: corn, wheat, alfalfa, buckwheat, barley, and oats. Group 3 is the onion family, or garlics are included in that. Now in group 4, I separate that into winter. We can call those cole crops, which is your lettuces, cabbage and mustard, or we have beet, chard, spinach, the beetroot or goosefoot family, and we have the carrot family. Now that's during the winter. Now a lot of these can grow through the summer, but some of them don't like it. So you have to buy the appropriate plant from the catalog. Sometimes you'll see it'll say summer squash or winter squash, and you have to keep that in mind. Bean and pea family in group 4, this can be grown in the summer, and these are any kind of beans or peas. So what we do is we divide the garden into 4 sections. We plant into each of the sections in a circular rotation. An herb garden can fit nicely into a 5th growing area. And what I'll do is I'll intersperse my beneficial plants that repel the pests I'm trying to get rid of within the row or the 4-foot area, 4-foot wide bed of where I'm trying to grow. Now with some plants like corn and beans, you can only plant in a straight row. Those things don't lend themselves as well. They can be planted in a 4 feet wide bed crossways, but I don't really do that. They can be done that way, but I find it easier to put corn and beans into straight rows. The last thing I'd like to do today with our 5 minutes that we have remaining is I want to teach you a little bit about using a BRIX meter to determine the nutrient level of your food. Dr. Reams, this was a Seventh-day Adventist gentleman who was highly respected in the scientific community. He's since passed on now, but he's the one who coined the phrase BRIX. He was an extremely brilliant man. Many of the scientists of a few years ago really looked up to this man, and he's the one who came up with this BRIX in this way. And he is the one that got the use of the refractometer started in agriculture. He found that BRIX was a general measure of quality. When the BRIX goes up, you know you did something right with the fertility. In other words, using compost tea, or when you side dress some of your plants, which you'll do, you'll have to feed your plants through the summer. What he did, he used this method to measure before and after, and he could tell what he was applying was doing its job properly. Also, with the fertility, you know how to get a sweet broccoli that you can't get out of the store is you make sure your fertility is spot on. So this is a really good way of doing that. So if the BRIX goes down, you did something wrong. A before and after BRIX test on plant juice tells the farmer how effective a nutritional foliar spray was. In general, plants will start to repel bad bugs when the plant sap reaches 12 BRIX or higher. Now I want to share with you, it is a scientific fact. If you have 12 BRIX or higher, you will not have pests. Now, you're probably thinking, man, that blows my mind. I can hardly believe it. But that is exactly right. It's been proven over and over again that healthy plants repel bugs. Living and nutrient-rich soil fertility, where the soil is alive and just breaking with microbial and mycorrhizae activity, has been proven that those plants do not get these pests. These pests come because the plants actually send out a signal when they're in distress. And that's why these bugs come. The higher the BRIX, the better the flavor and the better nutrition it contains. Now what I've done today, this is the BRIX meter I had. I try to, if you guys are going to buy one of these, you can either buy the cheap model or the expensive one. I bought a mid-range. They usually start at about $35 and go all the way up to $300. I spent about $100 on mine. I got a BTX 20 here. That goes up to BRIX 20. I probably should have bought a 32 so I could go a little higher, but for the most part, this one will be fine for me. So what I did, I wanted to show you guys the difference of the produce that you get in the supermarket between something you'll buy that's not organic and something that is organic. So let's see now. What I'm going to do is take some juice from the plant. Now, this will work on any plant. Sometimes what you have to do is take vice grips, like if it's a plant, say a broccoli leaf or a lettuce leaf or something, and you take a vice grip between two coins, and you put your leaf in there, and take that vice grip and clamp it down, and you'll get juice. But for today, I'm just going to use tomato, because it's easy, and just to show you what it can do. Now this is going to tell me the fertility level and what type of food I'm eating. This tells me a lot about what's inside this. So let's take, are these the organic? Okay, let's do the non-organic first. And then could somebody get me a paper towel from the kitchen? And just, I'll use my water bottle. I'm a professional at making do with what I have. So, okay, I've got lots of good juice. Now I'll show you, there's a meter inside here. Let me see if I can get good enough light. Okay, this BRIX right here is, it's about 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this tomato that we just bought from the supermarket, I won't name. Let's find tomato on here. I've got a BRIX reading of 4. Now,
It says 4.
here,
4.
do you want to look?
4 is 4.
Yeah, where is it? Right here? So 4 is poor. Okay, now in my garden, I'm going to want to see, I want to see at least 14. Because I'm not going to just go for excellent, I want the best. You see, was it 4?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, when I squeeze my juice on this meter, I'll make sure there's enough juice where it really lays nicely and there's no bubbles in it. So you want to keep that in mind. For those of you who decide you want to use this test, now let me rinse this thing. And now I'm going to do the organic. Now what do you think? This will be interesting, won't it, to see? Let's see what the organic stuff does. Now I have to warn you in advance. They say that the organic stuff is no better than the other. But we'll see. It might be. Maybe I'm being a little hard on the guys. Okay, so here's my organic tomato. Okay, this one is, it's just slightly less than 4.
Less?
Yes.
That's organic?
Here, corroborate my findings. It's just slightly less than 4. So, I don't want to start harping on organic stuff you get in the store, but if you guys are going and paying oftentimes quite a few more dollars for it, wasn't it indeed?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit less. You're getting scammed. And I really want that to sink in. What you guys should be doing is growing your own food. Even if you live in a place where you can't grow, you can grow in a pot. You can grow a tomato plant that gets large enough that you can at least give your family some healthy produce. Now, I got to tell you, I want better than poor for my family. And I think you guys do too. We're going to take a 5-minute break.